Hey everybody, what's up? Don Carr here with another round of What's on Your Pedalboard, and today I'm talking to Charlie Davis.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Man, thanks for being here, Charlie. Really
Absolutely.
appreciate it, man. So, Charlie, you're a sales engineer here at Sweetwater.
Yeah.
So, this is the thing that's always so interesting to me. You guys as sales engineers see a ton of gear.
Yeah.
I mean, everything that comes by. So what you pick is always an interesting choice. So let's talk about it. What do you got?
Absolutely. So starting at the beginning, almost always playing a Telecaster.
Nice.
Kind of my main guitar of choice these days. And on the back end, usually just always some sort of clean, loud amplifier because I'm getting pretty much all my tone from the pedals.
Cool.
So down the cable, first thing in line is hitting a JHS buffered splitter.
Nice.
Just good to get a nice clean signal right into there. That splits 1/2 off to the tuner, so the tuner is always on. Then the next side goes to the whammy ricochet.
Oh.
And that's just because with pitch shifting, I mean, that pedal kind of mangles the sound in a way anyway, so it's like I don't need more stuff in front of it, just get a good, pure, clean guitar tone.
Yeah, the better thing you can send to it, the more cleanly it's going to read it. And,
yeah, exactly. So for me, that's a good spot for that. And then I go out of that up to the SP compressor. I set that in the low mode. The blend is not up very high. I do a decent amount of like going back and forth between a pick and then my fingers for higher strings. So I like that just for like evening that out a little bit.
Yeah.
But like with chords, like it's not super squashed or anything sounding. So that just helps with that. And again, with single coils, sustain, things like that. And from there, it's going to the Boss volume pedal. I've played around with the positioning of that a lot. And I like it here because behind those first two pedals, like it's not affecting what they're doing.
Right.
Like I don't want it affecting how much compression the compressor is doing. But I like using it for different amounts of gain, controlling that. Swells, obviously.
Yeah.
And then also muting for tuning. So I use it for a lot of things. It's definitely probably one of the more desert island pedals on the board, probably.
Yeah, I'm a huge volume pedal fan, definitely. Now it's interesting because I use mine like after the drive pedals as more of a master volume thing, but for you, you're just kind of doing it all with your foot in terms of like, and it gives you all the gain shadings and stuff. I do that with a volume knob, but then you've got two things going. So you've just got one.
Yeah, there's enough stuff happening here that I've found that using it for the gain instead of the knob on the guitar, it's like, it's already a pretty weak signal coming off pickups down a cable. So it's like, to me, it's like running this wide open, letting it get to a buffer first, and then using the volume pedal to do it. It's like I just have a little less like presence, roll off and stuff. And again, that's all tonal subjective of which one you like better. But yeah, and then for me, as far as like volume and like master volumes, I kind of use my drives as my volume levels. So it's like clean is always the quietest, and then it kind of just goes up from there.
Oh, right. So it's just everyone's incrementally louder, and
Pretty
so if you
much.
just need to be louder, you just turn on another pedal.
Basically, because like for the band I'm in, we're called March on Comrade. We just play around town here in Fort Wayne, record records and stuff. It's like pretty much a dynamic shift in songs. Like it's going to start quiet, it's going to get louder.
Right.
And as the intensity of the song picks up, that's probably when you're going to add more gain. And as everybody adds more gain, you probably need to add more volume. So on that note, so I've got just these two JHS pedals as my drives, but I can get a lot of different sounds from them. I'm using the Morning Glory as kind of the one I use the most on the double barrel, and it's a pretty light just for a little grit. It's kind of doing like, if I play lightly, I don't get a ton of dirt, but if I dig in more, it will start to break up like an amp would, so it can kind of get like the... kind of adds that edge to it just for certain parts. And if I'm doing swells, it can be a nice little boost for that too. And then I don't use the moonshine side a ton, but it's really nice for if you don't want a ton more gain, but you want to stick out more. That just has so much more like bottom end and mid-range and stuff that, you know, it's... So yeah, still not a ton of level or gain or anything, but a little bit of a boost in volume,
and it's
then
thicker.
A lot more, definitely a lot thicker sounding.
Yeah, a lot of girth, man, really, really thick.
Yeah, for sure. So after the Morning Glory, we've got the Kilt V1. I've tried the V2 and it sounds identical. I just like having the boost independent.
Oh, right.
It can be nice if, just in a random live snare, it's like, oh, for whatever reason right now I'm just getting buried.
Yeah, I need more.
Yep.
More me.
Yeah, guitar players always need a little bit. They need a more me button. So, but this is kind of like the more distortion side of things. I'd used Rats for a long time. This is kind of in the same vein and ballpark of that. So that's definitely the biggest, like. And then with that too, since it has the independent boost, I just run that in front of the gain. So if I do want to get that a little bit more into like heavy, more fuzz territory, just kick that on with it. And I should probably also note, since everybody's probably going to notice it by now, that for the type of music we play, I always have a reverb on.
Yeah.
It's just need a hall reverb if you're going to play that kind of music. So from the kilt, we go kind of up to the modulation section, which I've got these two Walrus audio pedals. And considering for a long time, I don't think modulation pedals were particularly popular. They came out these, and I feel like they really helped bring it back a bit. And these two just sound great. I don't use them a ton, but like there's certain times where like just that I've set this phaser really slow but really deep.
Yeah.
And just that little bit of like just a really subtle shift just to add a little movement.
Yep, little motion, man. Sometimes that's all it takes just to kind of set the tone, set the mood for something.
Yeah, absolutely. And you mix that with like delay, gain, stuff like that, and you can make it more pronounced if you want to.
Yeah.
Same with the chorus. It's really there for like chimey chords, arpeggios, stuff like that, just again to take what would be a pretty normal clean part and just add a little bit of color to it. So for like the '80s, basically.
Yeah. Hey, man, wear it, own it.
I mean, one of my favorite bands pretty much of all time is The Police. So it's
Yeah.
like I've never really been able to get by without having a chorus on my board. Just got to have it for that.
Thank you.
From there, we kind of hit the fun section, which is all the delays and everything.
Yeah.
The first one is, I've just got this not too long ago. I love having like a really good digital delay, like just something really clean and pristine. And this dig is awesome for that. It has actually a pretty wide variety of different sounds it can do. Like with stacking the two different delays in it, like you can actually make some crazy like reverb washes and stuff like that. I kind of have it set more to like kind of like the edge, like dotted eighth thing, but since you have an independent mix level of each delay, you can kind of make that dotted eighth as subtle as you want it to be. So like for me, it's kind of you can hear that pretty clearly when it's just me, but then you get into like band context and it's something that's just a little bit of like ear candy hanging out in the background. The quarter note's definitely still like the
prominent.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's super fun. I've got it hooked up to a SaturnWorks favorite switch, which if I do want to switch it to, sometimes I just have it set to a quick like, just a fast eighth note delay.
Yeah.
And then after that, it comes down to the DoD Rubberneck. Really, really underrated analog delay. It has a ton of delay time, which I don't necessarily use really long delay times, but it just makes it so those repeats are clearer. It's not noisy. It's used pretty subtly. It's kind of my main like quarter note delay. Pretty dark.
Yeah.
And if you're playing not just those staccato chords, like kind of blends in underneath what you're playing really
classic
well.
Analog delay sound. That's kind of what you want. You want it to disappear a little bit.
Yep, absolutely. But what is kind of fun to do is if this is in like the eighth note mode, sometimes I'll stack them on top of each other.
Yeah.
And kind of make like a just kind of that wash sound, which when those repeats are hitting each other. It's more just creating almost reverb more than it's like really delay at that
And that's
point.
where it gets interesting too, because you hear, I mean, just then, I just heard the difference between the digital and the analog sound. It was like bright, dark, bright, dark, bright. I mean, and that's kind of again, more of the ear candy thing.
Yeah. And then out of that, it's into the Dispatch Master by Earthquaker, which is probably one of my favorite pedals on the board, just because it, you know, I think we were talking earlier, it kind of just does everything. It can be as subtle and small as you want, but even with like mix and reverb cranked, it's still just a real pretty sound. I use a lot for swells and that sort of thing, and I'll actually usually use it with the ricochet to kind of create that extra texture, so it's kind of like. And again, you could just play those chords higher if you want to, but just the computeriness of that ricochet just really changes the sound of it and gives it a whole nother vibe.
And yeah, and in a band context, especially, you know, if you've got a big band and there are a lot of guys playing, you know, atmospheric stuff or things that have a wide tone, you got to find your little sonic niche and fit in there and something like that. I mean, that's huge. You're creating a sound that nobody else in the band is.
Yeah, and it's because you can kind of come up with a guitar part and think, oh, this is really cool, and then realize that's actually stepping on something else. Well, now I could just take it up an octave and also make it sound not quite as, you know, just traditional guitar.
Yeah, because I mean, one of the things you're changing, you're not only changing the sustain, but you're actually changing the attack at that point too. And if you do that, then it's like you've gone into another realm sonically, which is always cool.
Exactly. And then from there, probably the other desert island pedal is the Strymon Flint. Again, the reverb is on kind of a light medium hall all the time. And yeah, it sounds great. I've used other reverbs that probably have more features, but I actually kind of like that this one's not, it has a nice sound, but it kind of sounds like an older digital reverb. Like it has a little bit of grit to it that I really like, and I think that's probably because they're also emulating older springs and stuff in it too, so some of that's probably inherent. But it also has a tremolo, which I don't use a ton. You interviewed Ryan, and he uses a lot of trem. So
right, yeah, and you guys are obviously in the same band, so
you
guys, it could get pretty seasick with both of you.
Yeah, it could get a little choppy, but it just gives you a nice, pretty subtle, and it can be fun live to, like, if you're doing like a heavy distortion part, to like just kick it on for like the last bar of something, just to like add that chop to it real quick. And then I've got that one on a favorite switch as well. Don't use it a ton live, but for that just really long tail, high mix. If you play too many notes with that, like, it's just a mess. But like if you're just playing those kind of like long chords that are ringing out, that in that case, like those intervals where they not a lot of notes in there.
Right. I mean, you're just playing a tenth, so at that point, you know, it's not only a wide interval, it's only two notes, and then you're just kind of moving it just a little bit.
Right.
If you're trying to fill a lot of space, even though the dynamic may be down, if it's just kind of down to you and the bass player or whatever, and you're doing that, you know, pretty interesting, man.
Yeah, it's really helpful for that kind of stuff, especially like if you are playing by yourself and you want it to be a little bit washier and stuff. Yeah, in a full band, it can get a little out of control. So not used a ton, but that's pretty much it. Nothing, for the kind of music we do, I think a lot of people assume that we're just doing these huge pedal boards and tons of stuff. And it's like, it's pretty straightforward. You don't need a ton of different sounds, just the ones that work. So
exactly, and I like that you've got everything set up to where it looks like there's not really a lot of knob twiddling when you're playing. I mean, it's just pretty much step on this to make this sound, step on that to make that sound, and that's about it.
I can't even handle pedals with presets for the most part. Like these Strymons, like with these favorite switches, is about as complicated as I can handle.
Two choices.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like, if I have to worry about also like, oh, on this song, don't I turn this knob a little bit here? Like, it's just going to be a disaster.
Yeah.
So basically just means those settings will just not happen live, because I'll completely forget about them.
And one less thing to worry about.
Yeah.
And when you're playing live, that's always a good thing.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, that's cool, man. Sounds great, Charlie. It really does, man. Nice stuff. Thanks for being here, dude.
Absolutely.
Appreciate it.
Thank you for having me. It was fun.
Yeah. So thanks for watching. If you have any questions about these pedals or any pedals for that matter, you can call like your Sweetwater sales engineer. You know what I'm saying? Sweetwater sales engineer, like this guy right here.
Just like me.
Yeah, that's right. All right, everybody, thanks.